This conference will now be recorded.
So, but we did notify him, he's aware of the meeting today. In one place it says that's the way it should be, and the other place says unless all board members are there. But I think I'm gonna say, anybody, if we got something, now's the time. No, for members. Mm-hmm. Members, you need to, unless your members are
Right. That's right, that's what I say.
If it's public comment, then that is
Different.
general. I mean,
Sure.
they talk about coupon day as far as that goes.
You ready? Yes. Okay. Very well, then I will call the special meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Let's start off with the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right, so let the record show that we do have a quorum with all members present. The first item on the, is to adopt an agenda. And in reading our bylaws, it looks like we need to stick to the script. I mean, if we want to add anything to the agenda, now's the time to do it, because with a special meeting, you're supposed to stick to the things that are published. So is there anything anybody would like to talk about other than the three things that are on there?
No, sir.
Okay, from staff, anything?
No, sir. You also have your closed session, but all that is
Yeah.
part of your public notice.
That's on there, yeah. Okay, very well. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Very well, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nay, any opposed? Nay. All right, motion carries. All right, first item would be public comment. We have a public comment at the beginning and the end, as usual. Any general public comment from anyone? Nothing back there, okay. Then we will close public comment. We have no old business. Okay, so on the new business, I guess the first two things, the COLA and the merits, kind of run hand in hand. So this discussion will kind of, dovetail with each other. And the reason I called a special meeting after speaking to you all individually and getting your opinion was we needed a meeting was that after last Thursday's budget meeting, we all felt like that these two items needed further consideration, and I figured it'd be best. So after that opinion became clear, I asked staff to come up with some options as to how we could address these issues and address the questions that I'd heard from the board. So that's how that started. So over the weekend, Ms. Warren has come up with an option that we need to discuss. I guess, is there anything further? Is that everybody's understanding, right? As to where we were? All right, very well. With that, then, we will turn it over to staff to say the option. Or do you want me to go through the option that we had right here?
That's
I
fine.
would recommend, let's just, even though you probably know it, but let's recap where we left, where those those percentages are at, so
Right.
the general public knows as well. Let me get on the microphone.
Yeah.
So where we left it in the budget was a 3% COLA, and there were no merits
Right.
for any departments as of Thursday. So there's a consideration that Ms. Warren has put together based on discussions I've had, I know with at least the chairman, but with everyone when we were trying to set up this special meeting. So, Ms. Warren?
Sure, absolutely, thank you. So the option that I wanted to present to the Board of Supervisors is if we were to reduce our COLA from 3% to 2%. We discussed this previously. The savings is roughly $90,000. And then if we were to add a merit increase in fiscal year '27 on top of the 2% COLA, and have that merit be looked at in the November timeframe when we do performance evaluations, and have it tied to performance evaluations of every employee. I ran some figures this is countywide across all departments, using an average of 2%, just wanted to see what number. We do have an existing, by the way, merit policy. I would like for Mr. Weekly to just confirm that next before I go into the numbers.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. I'm sorry, I'm the one that separated them. I guess I was thinking if you were going by agreement or action of either one. So the county does have a merit policy. You may recall last week when we were discussing merits, it was strictly around the sheriff's department. They are a constitutional office. Their merit system is not does not follow ours, so that's why they had the Lexi poll. Almost said Interpol. That's a movie I must have been watching all weekend. Lexi poll, and I think their merit policy, most all policies are the same as far as how they're done. The percentages would be different. So, for example, you have categories that's determined by whoever the hierarchy is of, you want to evaluate like the quality of work or reliability or things like that. So you have categories, and then you get rated per each category, and then ultimately when you add those numbers and do an average, it spits out a percentage. I think the sheriff's office merit policy, that range I think went from 0 to 6. Anything from unsatisfactory to all the way up to excellent. On the county side, similar thought process. Our range runs from 0 to 3. So that's the difference there. But overall, it is a merit. When I discussed with the chairman, and I have talked this over with Hannon too, one of the reasons why this is back to you for, why just one department and not all. If retainage was something you're looking at, that's one thing. If you get into marriage, you really have to look at all. If not, it could be viewed as a discriminatory practice. So that's why we're back looking at it as a whole. But how do you even allow or be able to do that? You ultimately decide what you fund or not fund. But in order to fund that, how can we live within the existing budget? The numbers you've already considered and reviewed to do so, that's where Jennifer, as she's explaining, you take COLA down from 3 to 2 for everyone, and it frees up some money. So we do have a policy that's county-wide, outside of constitutional officers, specifically for those who don't participate. I talked about a cooperative agreement last week because you have those agreements, or some choose to participate because you don't need separate, in my opinion, separate finance departments or human resources for a department. That's just cost prohibitive, and why not do it all together? But that's why there's a difference in merit policies for some constitutional officers versus others may follow our policy. So that is a county-wide, which would cover all departments, not specific individual policies for each department. Ms. Warren?
Let me add real quick, if y'all want to jot this down. It's in their personnel policies under performance evaluation, which is chapter 4. You have performance evaluation first, and it goes through, describes that, and then merit salary increase second. So that's where it exists in our personnel policies already.
And to get to those, that way you can download. I mean, I'm happy to have Jennifer bring it up on the screen if you want to see. But essentially, if you go to the Madison County homepage, one of the great features I love is their search bar. Because I can be a little lazy sometimes. So if you just type in personnel policy in the search bar on our website, hit enter, go right there below. It's going to populate results from that. Personnel policies right there. Your latest adopted, I think the last time there was any policy change. So if you amend one word or one sentence in any part of that, that changes the adoption date, which I think has a 2024 in there. But that's where you can find the various chapters of personnel policies to include the merit policy that Chairman Yao just described.
If I may, so have we been using this at all? And if we haven't, when was the last time we did use it? I mean,
Very
we
good
just- We
question.
just came up with a policy and said, here's our policy, and can one department use it where others don't?
So it's a very good question, and it does deserve some clarification. So merits happen from what? Performance evaluation. So evaluations are done every year, but just like our policy and the policy that the sheriff's office put up last week, all of it is dependent upon of funding. So each department could say, hey, we did our evaluations, we want to request a merit increase based on that. So it would be the same policy, the same evaluation form that they use to come up to that. And then it would be up to, presenting that to the board, and if you decide, hey, I want to give those. Traditionally, and I'm only going to speak for myself, I can't speak for the last, all the 18 years that Tilly and I talked about, because she's been here that long and no merits have been given other than, and it's important to recognize we appreciate COLAs or other things, but as far as merit, nothing within that time frame. It's really because you've been confined by making those hard decisions of what can you afford to fund and things of that nature. So the policy is there. We've applied it as far as the evaluation part. We just haven't put forth increases for you to consider outside of the COLA, which is cost of living, which we generally base one of the factors, Social Security, or any insurance. There were years where one year you had a 30% premium increase. Well, it's kind of hard to say, here's 5% COLA, which I think the last couple of years that was the COLA. Here's 30% premium insurance we would like for you to pick up. And by the way, can you provide for a 3% merit increase? It's kind of tough, but the policy is there. I'm going to go a little further. Mr. Chairman, cut me off any time. Maybe this opens up the avenue where if you're going to consider a little lower COLA, let's take a look at it and then maybe consider the merits each year, because it does incentivize the employee, right? That's your direct conversation you're having with them. Hey, you need to work on these areas, or wow, I wish, there were 10 of you. Can we clone you? You're doing these things and excelling. So it is important to have that direct conversation, because that's more meaningful. That's the day-to-day activity that they have. Is more so with the person and their department head than necessarily our offices. I mean, we see folks, we're small, right? But that day-to-day comes from the department head. So long way home, yes, we do the evaluations, but no, we don't put forth the merit, the salary increase recommendations due to usually decisions the board's made in the past on tough funding decisions.
So you just made a comment that made me wonder, so is this just gonna be for 27, or is this gonna be ongoing every year?
I think moving forward, unless the board, I get a certain feeling, or you tell me directly, do not bring merit increase, I think that we're gonna start doing that and let you all decide if it's something that can be afforded.
And is this kind of in lieu of a raise? So do they, county employees, are they still gonna get a raise? Because I don't know how raises work
So if you
during
go-
the year, or during, if they're here for 5 years, they get a raise, or, I don't know how raises work. If
Yes,
they
sir.
get one at all, I don't know.
If you go, and this is anyone, Jennifer, do you mind real quick going to the homepage and personnel?
I mean, I
policy?
hate to keep asking these questions, but
No, sir,
to
you're,
me, it's
you're one of the
relative to how
governing body
much.
members. We need to answer your question. So Jennifer's gonna bring up the personnel policy. When it comes to salary increases, I'm gonna go off memory, but she's gonna hold me to task when we go there.
Sure.
I would just, I was gonna say there's a couple of probably different ways to get to it. As increases, they can happen from several ways. So you can get a COLA if the board allows, merit increase if it's requested based on evaluation and the board funds it. If you have a promotion, that can happen. Longevity pay, or one of the last factors, if I remember this correctly, is if we went through this, I think a couple years ago, a pay and classification study. That's where you're looking at, all your job descriptions, pay grades, do they align with the duties that each person is doing within that grade? You're looking at market rates. Do we substantially get behind? And generally you get behind because we haven't been doing merits right, or cost of living has just gone through the roof, and that allow for some adjustments to get you to the market rate. So overall, that is your
and I think I covered longevity. Longevity, if you haven't been promoted, but you're at the top of your salary grade, because each position is graded and it has a minimum, mid, and a max salary range. So if you get to that top and you can't get any more adjustment outside of COLA, right? How do you get adjustment? Well, the longevity states, it's based on your performance evaluations, and then so many years, an average of that allows you to ask for an increase. So that's your menu, if you will, of opportunities for salary increases.
Not automatic,
Not automatic, no.
not automatic.
And I did want to, the reason I brought up this spreadsheet again was just, actually, let me pull up the right one here. It's just a reminder of what our other localities do around us. As you can see, it looks like 3 others do the merit plus the COLA. So Culpeper, Rappahannock, and Green, they do they're doing a 2% COLA plus they're doing their merits as well. So just to give you an idea of what the surrounding counties do. But with our evaluations happening in November, my proposal that I came up with was to have a merit-based pool in FY '27 that would be given January 1 to employees based on their performance evaluations. And they would get their COLA, the 2% COLA, on July 1, everyone would. And then on January 1, after their evaluations are done, depending on their scoring, they would get their merit-based increase January 1, so it'd be half a fiscal year's worth of funds. And looking at doing it that way, it actually came out to almost exactly the same amount of money as the savings on reducing the COLA by 1%. So it was a net zero to the budget. If you were to reduce the COLA to 2% and then allow merit raises across all departments for January 1. And I just used an average of 2% for all employees on the merit, just as a placeholder number.
Yeah, it's probably a conservative number at this point, I would think.
I think so.
Yeah.
And that would, allow the sheriff's department to have their merit pool, and all the other departments as well would have merit.
And when Ms. Warren says 2% budgeting, that's just budgeting. That doesn't assume everyone's getting the 2%.
Right.
Just like the sheriff put forth the policy and you saw the result of that. I mean, we labeled it employer, or they labeled it employer 1 through 25 or something like that. But, there are going to be some that may hit 0, some 1, some 2, some 3. So it's a mixture, but you have to find a way to budget it for it.
So the one thing I'd like to add is these calculations that Ms. Warren did includes the 38,000 that the sheriff department has asked for, and his merit increases would be effective, you calculate it July 1st, okay? They would be effective July 1st as opposed to the rest of them January 1st. Just, that's how we calculate it. So anything else, Jim?
Ms. Warren, and I apologize because I actually should have calculated this myself because you've provided the information. But I want to take a hypothetical employee. I know there's no hypothetical employee, but I would like to take a hypothetical employee and I'd like to calculate let's assume that we have an employee making $60,000 a year. And that employee is getting the $500 deductible family plan. Okay, now 16.9% increase on that premium. What would that dollar amount be? I knew you have the information, and I should have done it. I just thought about it. I've been thinking about it all week.
I know work session 6 had
Yeah, let me pull that up. I've got the spreadsheet. We can look at that.
And then, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to argue both ways because I think we need to do that. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I kind of did that. I looked at it like, okay, a 1% change in COLA is worth 90,000, right? According to the spreadsheet. So.
Yeah, I want to kind of drill down to an individual basis, looking at it on a micro level now.
Yeah, I did it at the top level. It's like, okay, but we threw in 225,000 to pay everybody's insurance, so.
Right.
That was the 16.7 premium
Yeah,
increase. Yes.
right.
Hey,
So-
Jim, I did a calculation on 60,000.
Okay.
And if that 1% on 60,000, that came down to a 29 cents per hour based on 52 weeks and 40 hours per week.
Okay, so you really went granular, that's good.
If you look at the
Well,
sheriff,
yeah.
if you look at one of the sheriff's employees, who's at 59,740, and they're figuring a 3% incentive or fee, that's at 1,846.
Right. So a 3% COLA on 60,000 is 1,800. What I'm looking at is, okay, what's gonna be the premium increase, and if we cover it, what's that amount? And then compare that to a 2 versus a 3% COLA. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
So that's the total premium increase, but let me give you what the county's amount of increase is, because that's really what you want to know, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that would be that. Actually, do it the other way, equals. The county would pay that minus the original. Oh, okay, so it would be 406, then, because it's passing along the full
whole
increase.
thing,
Yes,
yeah,
my
so-
apologies.
So
So
that would be, that's what we're paying, we absorb the full amount on the
Yes.
$60,000 employee. That would be $406.
$406 per month.
Okay, so if we're looking at $1,800, if it's a 3% on 60, that's 1,800, and that's about. Let me calculate it. I just did a cognitive test. I had to do a doctor. You know, when she was 65, I had to draw a little clock. I took it home, put it on my refrigerator. So proud of it.
You have to put the hands on there, yeah.
All right, let me just do something here real quick. Yeah, that's what I had to do. I had a little hand on one. I wanted to just make
So
sure.
1,800, that's 150 a month, is that what you're talking about?
150 a month
Yeah.
is what they would get if they got, I mean, if
3%.
the 3%. Okay, and then the insurance is another $406 a month.
Yep, so you add those two together.
So
that's-
that's 556, 556.
If we reduce that to 100, looking at these figures, so what we're looking at, let's assume that we did a 2% COLA and we absorbed the entire health insurance. All right, that's gonna put us at about, instead of, that'll be 100, that will be
506.
506 increase per month on a hypothetical $60,000 salary. Okay? And then if we add the merit at the mid-year, that's gonna add another $50 per month. Okay, so that's what I wanted to start, that's my starting point on this micro commentary. Now I'm gonna argue it from two sides. And one I argued last time. I would put our county employees up against anybody's anywhere. They do it, they're competent, they're committed. You know, this weekend when I got a call Sunday morning from Mr. Snyder, in that, you know, Jonathan and Kim and Jennifer, they were jumping on stuff Sunday trying to get this worked around. You know, they could have said, well, we don't work till Monday morning. And you would hear that from a lot of people. Plus, remember that if we're getting a fund balance rollover averaging, I think it was about 1.4 to 1.6 million a year, that means that our county's efficiency, which is directly attributed to our workforce, is turning back about 6 to 7 cents per 100 on property tax every year. And that's why we're not having to push property taxes up nearly as much as we would otherwise. So I'm for taking care of our people because good people are actually extremely cost effective. Okay, now I'm going to step back as somebody who doesn't know what's going on in the government other than what they think or what they hear. And I'm out there and I'm John Q. Public and I'm working in the private sector, and my employer comes along and says, okay, I got to whack another $200 a month off your paycheck for this cost share because your insurance is going up. And they're like, that's bad. And then they hear the county budget, and the county is picking up 100%, and they're like, that's not fair. And I think, and you know what, they're right. I was in private because I had to pay my own health insurance for years. And every year, you ate it. You know, when I went to work for the state system, well, they're two different worlds.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, how are we going to balance fairness, and how are we going to make that argument to the public? Quite frankly, I think we need to take care of our employees. We also need to take care of our taxpayers. And as I said last time, if we were raising taxes for 2021 based on the inflation rate, our rate right now would be about 63 cents plus. So we are keeping the cost of running this government and the cost of taxing people well below the rate of inflation. We're not going to be able to do that forever. And that's why we're doubling down on this economic development. And it's like turning an aircraft carrier around. It's going to take a while. It's going to take some distance. But that's why we need to focus on trying to expand our tax base, because otherwise the cost of running the government's not getting any cheaper because of inflation. We don't run a flabby government. I know I've been on this board long enough to know that I'm really impressed on how this county government works. And I genuinely say that. When I first came on the board, I was like, I'm going to cut some people out. I know I can. And I went around and looked, and, I think that the people have stepped up their game, and I'm really impressed. So I'm going to have to lean towards the 2+1 merit, or even the 3. But 2+1 merit, I think, maybe makes more sense. And that keeps our property taxes actually lower than most of our neighbors, except Culpeper, which has data center money. But I'll guarantee you in 5 years, Culpeper's rates are going to be Northern Virginia rates, because they're building 2 schools, 3 schools, 8,000 houses approved that haven't been built yet. They're headed for hitting a brick wall. And I hope that we have the vision not to put ourselves in that position. And that's what we've been doing. And historically, that's what this county does. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my argument, and that's what I wanted to come up with,
Sure.
and that's where I'm at.
All right. Who else?
I agree with Jim.
Yeah, I personally, I think that this proposal takes care of our employees and the taxpayer. And it's so nice. I mean, all these years, you got department heads that, they have their direct reports coming to them, whether they're pleased with the COLA or not pleased with the COLA, and department heads, it's like, well, that's all decided by the Board of Supervisors. I would love to see some of this decision-making be put back into the hands of the department heads. Now, the policy, the very first line on their policy says that funding, there it is. When budgeted by the board, that's the very first 5 words that's in there. So if we can do it this year, that'd be great. And in the coming years, like this year, the COLA for Social Security and all, which is a good guideline, and it's used in a lot of places, is 2.4. Okay, and we generously went 3. We started at 3 and stayed at 3 for whatever reason, other than we were trying to take care of employees and stuff. And the schools had done that, so they sort of set a precedent. Yeah, I think, so I went through, of course, I'm sorry, anybody else got anything? Being an accountant, I got my debits and credits here.
Before you go, continue your thought, but Jim, did I hear you say 2% COLA, 1% merit? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's fair. I think it's fair to everybody.
This is calculated at 2 and 2. And the only reason I would advocate leaving it at 2% merit is because we're pushing it until January 1st for that, so that effectively makes it 1. I mean, that's just my opinion, but we can get that done.
Mr.
But-
Chairman.
Generally, while you're still looking at that. Generally speaking, the performance evaluations are done in November, traditionally anyway. That's per policy, is that right? So that's what we would be doing, is wait until January 1 anyway.
Right.
The suggestion, I'd just like to jump in, Mr. Chairman, so we'll
Sure.
make sure we're answering Supervisor Snyder's question. So what was said by staff when you began this was you would fulfill the 38,000 requests, which the sheriff did his merit policy and plug that in. That would begin July 1st, I think is what we said.
That's
And
right.
the other merits, if you so give them, would be a January 1st approach. And then if I may, Mr. Chairman, I have something else I think we need to interject, so we have clarity, because it's a scale. We hear the 1%, we just need some clarity on the scaling.
Yeah, with the scale, it's 0 to 3, correct? 0 to 3%. So some people could get 1, some could get 2, some could get 3, some could get 0, based on their performance evaluation. So if I understand, you're discussing a 1% would be the cap, so that if you would either get 0 to 1, is that what you're suggesting for the?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking.
Yeah,
of it.
okay.
You either get one or you don't.
Yeah, you either get it or you
You
don't.
get 0 or you get 1%. That's what I'm hearing him say.
Well, I look at it a little differently. I look at it like I would calculate what that pool of money would be, and X department gets X number of dollars based on 1%. So then, come merit time, there are some employees that won't get it all because they did not perform adequately, or they haven't been here very long, and then there are some others that have. So you've got that pool of money, so I could give, this person 3%, but 2 or 3 other people in the department nothing, because it's within my budgeted allotment of money. See,
All right, well, now I'm thinking back to when I was in higher ed, and
Yeah.
there was a big argument every year about evaluations,
Uh-huh.
and because it was tied to pay increases. Well, guess what? Everybody was getting an excellent evaluation
Uh-huh.
year after year.
That's-
The state came in and said, that's not right. And it really isn't, even though probably just about everybody would get an excellent in the county, just because of their capability. So I'm glad Ms. Warren brought that point up, because it actually could balloon beyond 1%. Am I correct? Across the board.
I think I like the approach of the pool of money. I think that's a great approach, that each department has a specific pool for their department, that they pull from, and they can evaluate and, look at it appropriately. Because if you just assume everybody gets the same percentage in the department, it's really not, in my opinion, going by that evaluation and score. You either get 0, you either get 1. That's kind of hard. But I think if you have a pool and you can say, all right, we have $10,000, it's a very tiny department, this person scored superior, this one scored average, and you can break up that $10,000 amongst the employees. I think, to me, as an employee, that sends a better message of, and as a supervisor, that, we have that this is what our pool is, and we need to look at it appropriately to be fair to everyone.
And I would just like to add to that, if I may, I think we talked about the term super manager. That's someone that's just, regardless who you are, we want to be the revered person. That's not what department heads are tasked with. We got to hit the fast pitch as well as the slow pitch, and that means calling the shot. So while we don't have a very inundated system, when I worked for Culpeper County, they had a SMART system. I'm just not smart enough to remember the acronym, but it was a manual. But I do like the gist of it. It was justification. So whatever I scored you, if it was below, I gave examples, and it wasn't. You shouldn't be caught off guard as an employee unless it's just occurred within that month during the evaluation. If it's throughout the year, you're having a conversation. But you're justifying the score. So if it was something poorly, there'd be examples. If there's something exemplary, again, examples. You went above and beyond what your normal duties are. You had time on your hands. You went to help another department. Whatever the example is. So it's fair. We should never have, and this is where there's checks and balances, because these evaluations go to Tilly. They don't come directly to me. So she's looking for those things. So there should never be a score of like, hey, you ranked the highest, but there's nothing written under that. Or, in fairness, if they have a lower rank, you need to provide some guidance. So that is the expectation of me trickled down. It can't be just a, here it is to everyone. It's based on your performance.
And I'd like to add that we've always, my recommendation has always been HR should review every single performance evaluation and validate the scoring against the scales that we set as a county. And it should definitely be something that is double checked by our HR team to make sure that the score is appropriate, and should be a clear, you get, if you take a continuing ed course, you get this amount, this score. There should be this factor, so that's just my opinion on that
And
one.
so to your point, Jim, if a department head decides they want to give, if everybody is excellent and they want to give it across the board, then they wouldn't have but 1% worth of money to distribute. But they could give it more with the pool. They could give it more otherwise.
And that's
that makes
based on,
perfect sense.
Yeah, okay.
that 68,000 is based on 6 months too now, right? I mean, because so if
That's
next
correct.
year, assuming that all percentages are the same, that would be 136,000.
That is correct.
Coming out of that same pool.
That is correct. It would be,
If we budget it again.
correct. It is 6 months worth and not a full 12 months.
And so that kind of argues back to, I like what both of y'all said. I like the 2% because it's only starting until January, but I like the 1% because that really it kind of caps it annually on back out here to probably around
And
140,000. So,
if I may say one other thing, I totally understand the balancing act with the county picking up $400 for a family. However, if you think about it from an employee's perspective, that's not putting money in their budget. I mean, it really isn't. They're relying on that extra income for the inflation they face as a family. And yes, it's a balancing act, but thinking about it as an employee, that extra $400, it's not,
And then, and to top that off, if Jennifer can bring it back up on the screen, the other localities, I take what each of you say, important, so whatever that feedback may be. And I agree, and I'm not just saying it as the county administrator. I guess I have a level to state this, but I agree we have excellent folks. Showing who you compete with is important. That's not for us, again, I've said this conversation before. Planning District 9 is made up of 5 counties. When we look at ourselves, we're looking at green, we're looking at orange, we're looking at copper. We're never gonna be number one unless there's some economic opportunity and we hit oil, and your policy may look a little different. You may feel a little different, but hopefully the fabric doesn't change, the makeup of that, to where if you're not as competitive, that doesn't mean if we had turnover, we would lower our expectation of service, but you never know when that turnover occurs, what may backfill those positions. So that's kind of the thought as well when you're looking at these percentages. Again, you all decide that. We can only make recommendations, but we're going to follow whatever directive you give here today.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick comment. So
Got your mic on?
it is.
Okay.
So when I was 22, I worked for 3 years for county government. And I remember we'd get these COLA adjustments. And I remember the people I worked with, like there's some people that just weren't doing the work. And there are other people that were doing twice as much work as they should do. Then I got into the private business world for the next 40 years. And we did much like this. If someone met their evaluation and they were just crushing it, they knew beforehand that they would get this money if they did everything that was listed by their manager. So it gave the managers the option to really manage. Like right now, the money's just coming from the board and it's spread across everybody, and we don't know what's happening on the ground. Like we rely on the department heads to tell us, but the department heads are doing it every single day. They see who's just adequate and they see people that are just superstars. And that, giving them that ability to reward those people, the people that are getting that reward see that this is what happens when I work smart and hard, or the people are just sitting back and just pushing just enough to get through. That might incentivize them to do better, but they'll definitely see the difference. And I think that will make our government work even better if our department heads have the ability to give those bonuses. So that's just one.
Yeah.
And then following up what Ms. Bourne said, and she's absolutely correct. basically the $400 a month extra is to a large degree ambiguous or intangible, because it's not putting more money in my pocket. But I do think that, you know, as part of compensation reviews or however we do it, you know, it should be noted, look, the county's picking up another $400 a month. And it's unfortunate. I mean, you going back to Social Security, I'm on Social Security now and Medicare, and give me some time, it'll be hospice for another year, another budget year. But, you know, you get a raise in Social Security, and the next thing they raise the Medicare premium.
Yep.
So you don't end up with any gain. So, I mean, this is just a game. It's, you know,
Yeah.
but no, we want to do right by the employees, and we want to do right by the taxpayers, and it's like a thin line, just like this. So anyway, thank you, Ms. Warren, for all your work. I don't know what we do without you.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yes.
like to just say, I think that this is the fairest way because of the fact that it creates a clearer inventory of all the services. Their cost, performance, demand, their cost, their performance, and the demands. And I think that it adds personal responsibility to everyone. And that's important instead of all fingers pointing back to us. And also with this insurance, that is a huge, huge benefit that I don't know how many people really realize how big that is. And the thing that concerns me is it did go up 16.7% this year, but what's it gonna be next year? You know, we're gonna have this same thing again, and hopefully it isn't anything like it is right now, but I'm thinking this will work, and it makes them, they've got, everyone's got a little bit of skin in the game, and so, I think that may work.
Okay.
I think to Supervisor Sherman's point, well, if you like this strategy, I won't take credit. I trained under Frank Bosio, retired county administrator from Culver. But there was recognition of just what you said, Ms. Sharman, the contribution. So I haven't looked at the pay stub system here in a while, but most localities have gone to an e-pay stub, so you're not, I guess you can always request a hard copy, but we generally give it to you so you can go print it and look at your W-2s or whatever. But I remember at that time, and this was during the Great Recession. I usually say depression, but recession. I don't want to wish depression on it. But they made it a point saying, hey, payroll, put that on there. We want to show all of it, not just what you're paying or your withholdings, what the county's paying. So administration would be happy to work with payroll to do that so everyone can see that.
I think it should be a letter at the end of the year. I think Tilly and I can put that together, a letter that this is your total compensation package from the county for the year.
I think that'd be good practice.
Yep.
But you can see the employer, like that 2,500 or whatever insurance is, you can see that.
Okay, anybody else? So I, you know, being my typical accountant self, I go through what's, you know, debits and credits here. What's good, what's bad. So I came up, I wrote this stuff up. So I said, the advantages of this: budget neutrality, no increase over the current FY27 projection. Performance alignment, merit recognizes individual contribution rather than across-the-board increases. Retention strategy, a mid-year bump can help with morale and retention without front-loading cost. Now, my potential concerns were the COLA perception. Employees may view a reduced COLA as a cut. The timing, a January 1st merit means employees will wait 6 months for the second increase. So they were my two concerns, but my overall assessment, I wrote, the proposal is fiscally sound, budget neutral, operationally feasible. It trades a universal 3% COLA for a COLA and a targeted merit, with the merit timed to minimize fiscal impact. The county ends up with more control over compensation, better alignment with performance, no increase to the FY27 budget. So that was just my summary to myself, which I think we've all covered earlier today. So now I guess now the only decision we need to make is the 2% merit in January. Do we want to go to 1%? Go to 1?
I thought it was 2 COLA and 1 merit. Am I
No.
right?
we've got,
excuse me, my analysis was done on 2% COLA, and I did the 2%, I took that 2% of approach just because it's 0 to 3, you never know what people are gonna get. And that came out to roughly $68,000 in a pool for, not accounting for the sheriff's department, just every other department. It was a total of $68,000 of a pool with FICA, VRS, all of the fringe that has to be added. And then that's where it was budget neutral because we're saving the 90,000, but you're spending roughly 68, and then the sheriff's 38. Well, it's a little bit more, but we could make sure it was budget neutral. We could use that pool, whatever that pool came out, if it came down to 60,000, if that's what you approved, that would give the ability to do 0 to 2%.
Yeah, because let's see if I can say it in a different way. So we're trying to stay, so I'm hearing several things. We're trying to stay within what was already kind of factoring it as a total budget number, not these programs, but do not impact more is what I'm hearing to the budget. Secondly, what I hear Ms. Warren say is, if we went in and factored, we're not suggesting this approach, but if we just assumed everybody's getting 3%, you'd put that number on, and that would be your pool. What Ms. Warren is doing is you're putting 2%. That does not mean everybody's gonna get a 2% across the board. That's your pool of money, so that, you gotta factor some way to bank that. And then if you do your evaluations, then those scores will equal whatever amount. It may be less than 2%, but no more, obviously, as far as the pool of money is available. If it's up to 1%, to me, what I'm hearing is then either one way or the other. Ms. Warren would go back in and do a calculation of 1% of all salaries, I believe, to get that pool of number. But if it's a straight no more than a 1% on a score, then that's gonna change your scoring range. I just wanna clarify that and then ask for redirection, or, further direction if I may, just so we apply it, because I think the way she's budgeted is, and again, we don't have to be most localities, but that's how localities do it, because you've gotta have a number, assuming that I've seen it even a little more. I think she's been conservative, which I appreciate. If a company has a 0 to 5% range, they'll budget it of a pool of money of an average of 2.5, so it's half whatever your range is, and then you just do your evaluations, and it generally comes out, for the most part, as a wash. That money's effective. But I just wanna make sure we all understand we're saying the same thing, so we clearly have your direction and then plugging that in, so.
okay, so I think we're all on board with the calculation becoming a pool. So they have the ability to give 0 up to 3 if they didn't give any. But now just the calculation right now, and I was just thinking, all right, so right now we were at 3 and Social Security's at 2.4. So if we go to 2 and then we only do 1 in January, that's half a year, so that's 2.5. So to your point, I think 1% is probably consideration, but that's for all of us to decide whether we want that pool to be calculated on 2% or 1%.
Could you go
That's
2.5?
to
Could you go 2.5% COLA?
2.5% COLA.
Yeah, I mean, because the national's 2.4, right? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Then what would you do with the merit?
Well, if you wanted to stay with the 1. That way, if you were to get both, you'd get 3.5. Right now, if it's 2 and 2, you could get a 4. You could get 4%, right?
No, what
Total.
Our policy says you could go from 0 to 3.
That is
That-
for merit.
That's the range
Yeah.
on the merit, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, because it's mid-year,
Right.
2% is really 1% for the whole year.
Right, if you
Correct.
think about, and that's
That's
kind of what I looked at is, I mean, you're really you're calculating your budget on 3% total because you're doing 2 on July 1 and you're doing 2 pool on January 1, which is half of a year, so that's cut down to 1.
Right.
So that's where you equal your same amount.
And I sort of like the optics of it that, you know, I could earn myself, you know, another 2% and, or, no, actually, I'll take that back. What am I doing? There I go, talking like we're going to cap it. That's not true. I could earn myself whatever my performance is based on
That range.
that, with that pool of money, yeah.
And anyway, Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate your summary statement. I think it was right on the money.
Well, thank you.
Can we confirm that we just keep this as neutral, though? So
What's
we're-
that?
We're not raising any money for the budget we already decided on?
This is neutral,
This will be.
This would be budget neutral, correct?
Okay, so
absolutely.
that 68,000 will come down a little bit?
We'll make sure that it's budget
That's what I
neutral.
mean.
Yes,
So we will make a budget.
yes.
Okay.
Basically
Okay.
using that nine.
And do we want to take it from both sides, the constitutional side and our side, the county side?
So
Make
what,
that-
what I'm understanding, Mr. Buchanan, to your question, that's what we're doing with COLA. COLA drops from 3 to 2 across the board, including those offices. The merit, the only difference is that one constitutional office would get it beginning July 1st.
That's fine.
And the rest of the departments January 1st.
But it was 38 and 68, is that right, what you said? But that would put us a little bit over the neutral mark.
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying I will make sure that the pool that gets, the final calculation is budget neutral.
So my question is, are we gonna take it from both sides, so make it neutral? I didn't wanna just make the county suffer, you know, employees. I think the sheriff's department and the county should probably give a little bit back to make it neutral.
I think, and let me further clarify, because I think I'm getting to Mr. Buchanan's answer. So obviously, we do November evaluation every year, as Mr. Snyder pointed out. We're not saying that the merit increases, should you approve funding, and that approach would be based on the on the current evaluations, it would be based on FY '27, so those are unknown. I think just focusing on that 90K, that's the reduction of the 1% COLA across the board, is the pool of money we will concentrate on to make what the sheriff has requested happen, as well as the merits that, depending on what you decide today, if hypothetically you say yes, we will use the remaining portion to make that whole.
Okay. Did I say that?
Because you already had the 38 in there for the sheriff, I think.
I know,
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and next year, are we gonna revisit the
Better.
same merit
90.
or no?
I would recommend that when we do the budget each year, we do what we did this past year, which was poll, look at our sources, Social Security, all of those, as well as the surrounding counties, and discuss both merit and COLA every year. I think that's the right approach.
Yeah, and I don't see why, if I was a department head, come next year, I would put something in there saying I would like to have $10,000 for merit increases for my department, and then that comes in front of us.
right.
And here we go.
And it's a separate line item. It's not the COLA where everything's lumped in together. And then people get upset because your COLA is bigger than my COLA when it's not. That's not what's
We
happening.
can track that, but, yeah.
Yes, I can track that in a spreadsheet for sure,
Yeah.
what the difference between
Okay.
merit and COLA.
So, we good with that? So,
Once again, are we going with the 1% or the 2%?
It looks like.
Two and two.
Two and two
is
for only half a year, so it's
I get it, yeah,
Okay.
yep,
Okay?
yep.
2 and 2 pooled, sheriff July 1st, everybody else January 1st.
Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
considering that.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the proposal.
Okay. Anything else on the first two things? Then let's go to the transit occupancy tax rate discussion.
Yeah, I think I should recuse myself from this discussion, as I
Okay.
have a background.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I appreciate Supervisor Buchanan on that front, I want to be clear, that does not discard your right if you wish to make public comment from the podium. We did check with counsel on that. You are allowed that right should you choose to. I just want to be fair in that response. Ms. Warren is going to bring up, Mr. Chairman, a lengthy explanation I can go through, sir, if you wish.
Yeah, why don't you kick that off?
All right, so, Todd, transient occupancy tax is allowed, per Virginia Code Section 58.1-3819. And furthermore, if you want to get into the details, go to paragraph A2 within that statute. Our ordinance references that state code and our code, local code. You can find that in Article 6, Section 24.129 exclusively. And the way it's written is you assess a 5% fee right now for TOT. 2% comes to the county. Anything in excess of 2 goes to a fund. I think the code says must be set up in a trust. So we have an established TOT fund for the sole purposes of using those funds only, per the code, for things related to tourism and traveler nature. So that's what we're doing. That's what we have been. The question was based on when you guys had said, hey, what about if we consider a 1% increase in lodging? Okay, does that mean that, one, I think at a minimum, we would have to amend our code to say it's a 6% tax if it goes through public hearing and you all approve it and so forth. So you'd have to amend it per se your total. However, the question was, well, does that mean 2% would go to the county for whatever purposes? It could go to your fund balance, you could use it as fund capital, however you want to do. And does that mean the 3% that was going to the TOT fund now becomes 4%, or can the county recoup and that additional 1%? I placed this in front of Hannon. I've also the commissioner, the treasurer, Ms. Warren, and you can see in yellow is what I referenced in paragraph A2 of the Virginia statute. It says all that 5% as I just described. However, in that paragraph further down, what you see in yellow is taken from that. Any excess over, I think their term is the combined 5% of the rate imposed pursuant to this article shall not be restricted in its use and may be spent in some manner as general revenue, meaning that that additional 1% could come to the county coffers to be used however you see fit. So assuming that all this would go through, then you'd have to change your ordinance or your code that would say you charge a 6% fee with the understanding that 3% would come to the county, 3% would go to the TOT fund. You would cite that code section like you do now, so it's clear that the combination over 5 is allowed to come back to the county. So, well, really, it's already there, but you may want to clarify it more. Lastly, Mr. Daniel chimed in. I believe he's off today. When he looked at this, he said he believes that you may have to go in front of some tourism advisory council. I checked with Tracy. I was looking at Page County. Thankfully, Jennifer did some research on that. I wanted to see, all right, they went to 10%. What are they doing? I also looked at Greene County. They had recently gone up. I forgot what year, what percentage they're at. And Tracy mentions she believes Greene County did not take that in front of an advisory council. I'm not saying don't do that. What my question will be for Hannon is, let's say we go in front of a tourism advisory council. We have a TOT committee, so I think that's the equivalent to the council. When we made the request for the 250th committee, we would like to use monies from the TOT fund because it is tourism related. We went to that committee, Tracy did, and got their blessing per se, and then we did a supplemental. I do not think, but this is where legal comes in, if, let's say, an advisory council said, no, we don't like it, I don't think that binds the board by making a decision either for or against the increase. I don't see any harm, even though apparently Greene County didn't do it. I do not see any harm of talking to the TOT committee. One, they should know they're tied closest to the tourism committee, and folks that have short-term rentals and lodging can be aware of it. They would have a voice. They would still have a voice at a public hearing. That's everybody's voice, including any certain industry. But that is staff's understanding based on the majority's direction of proposing a 1% increase, that's how your revenue or the split of that tot fee would be remitted to the county.
Questions from the board on this? Yes.
Can I make a general statement? Even though I'm not.
As a,
I would request, it's hard to say this to my boss, if it pleases the chairman and you, Mr. Buchanan, to do it from the podium, I think you can.
Before we vote on this, I'd like to.
Yes, I would
I don't think
request, I would
we
like
can
him to
vote
go to
on
the
it, but
podium
yeah.
to do so.
go to the podium and speak as a public.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm just trying to follow parliamentarians. Is that on, Kim? No, he's.
Yeah, since I'm recusing myself from the vote, but I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
Right now, the county takes 5% and it splits it with TOT, or with the tourism, and then the county gets the other monies, right, the split. And if we raise it to 6%, it's still gonna be split some way. But, so really, between the county and the state, they'll be taking, if we do this raise, 11% from person running the campground, the Airbnb house, the cabins, whatever it is. So that's bad enough already that we're paying 11% from that. And it's not just that our visitors are paying that, it's the person that's running that business. The numbers are down. I've talked to 3 different people that do Airbnbs, they do camping, and they do tiny homes. The numbers are down 20% from last year, and last year's numbers were down from the year before. So by adding this, you're putting, I think, unfair burden on these owners and thinking that we're just gonna have the visitors pay. Well, if you're not getting the visitors, then these people are gonna be hurting and they won't be able to continue business and paying taxes in the county. So I'm against this, and I'd just like to say that I think if we do raise the taxes, it better go to tourism, because those dollars are bringing people into the county, and we're gonna need more people coming into the county. So if you're gonna do the split, make sure the tourism, that fund goes into tourism dollars, or for the budget for the tourism department. But again, I urge the people on the board not to vote for this. Thank you.
Okay, okay, as I understand it right now, you know, we've already, last Thursday, we took a poll, 4-to-1 poll to increase the lodging tax by 1%. So there's, I mean, unless we want to take another poll, I don't see where that's changed at all. And there's no vote on anything at this point that I can think of.
I would just need to know, Mr. Chairman, if I may interject, if that's the case, you still want to move forward, I would like clarification of how you want the funds remitted. So right now, so you can still do the 6, which is the proposed 1% increase, but in order to understand and advertise and possible change to our code is the remittance part. I'm sure the language is already there,
Yeah.
just so staff understands. Are you saying 3 to the county? When I say you, I'm saying as the board, 3 to the county, 3 to tot, or
Yeah.
2 to the county, 4 to tot. We do need to understand that.
Yeah.
I would just like to throw out, we're talking about $50,000, is that right?
You have a chart.
Yeah.
That's correct. Every 1% was 50,000 was the estimate from
Right.
Davenport.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that amount,
Right.
the amount that we're talking about.
Yep, so in my opinion, we gotta go 3 and 3.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want, can you poll so I can
Yeah.
make sure
We-
we understand
Mike?
everyone's position?
I can attest for what the speaker was saying, because with me having rental property outside of the county, I'm down about probably just under 20%, but that's pretty close. You know, we are now putting stuff on specials to bump that back up, because that particular county has raised it up so much that I understand what the speaker was saying. So I'll just say that. I think I would probably like to stay as what we've been talking about, but I did want to clarify what he was saying, that that's the same thing ongoing with other counties.
All right? So, we have it in there, who's in favor? I'm in favor of leaving it and split 3-3. Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, Nancy, all right, so it stays in there with a 3-3 split.
Thank you.
But, you know, Mr. Chairman, let me just make this off the tangent, way off the tangent comment, and going back to Citizen Buchanan's comments. You know, one of the things that we've tried, tourism is a big industry here, we know that. And of course, one of the goals is to extract, I shouldn't use that term, extract as much money as we can from visitors, because that's the goal of tourism, correct? Am I not right? But I do think that, we probably need to look at how we can do that better than just raising our TOT tax. I think it's something economic development's gonna have to take a serious look at, along with some other things. But we've got Mr. Helmy coming up here. I hope that's very successful, because that will be a significant source of revenue. Hopefully Crigglersville School will get going at some point in time, and I'm hoping the Madison Hills with the Ren Fair and all that takes off, because that'll all help fund some more of the things that we need to do.
Yeah,
But anyway, I just want to throw, because I sympathize. Now, the thing though is with Mr. Snyder, his property and what's going on in Virginia Beach, that's a whole different magnitude than what we're talking about here in Madison County, because they just keep jacking your taxes up, real estate taxes up a lot every year.
A lot, yeah.
And to the point where it's becoming more and more difficult to make any money. Yes, sir.
I just want to add one quick thing. One of the business owners I talked to was talking to a realtor to sell out and leave. So just keep that in mind.
yep. Okay, let's see, all right, with nothing further on that from staff
doesn't. I
or the
think we have
board?
clarity.
All right, very well. Then we will come back to public comment. Any
So,
public,
sorry, are we, and that's fine, no discussion or anything, clarification on the other, tax increases,
we did not put any of that on the agenda,
okay?
so.
Yep.
Right. Okay, back to public comment. Have public comment? Nothing? All right,
Ms. Turner, anything online?
Comment online, oh, sorry, but I
No
will say
chat?
you had 77 viewers on YouTube, and you've had 2 on GoTo, but you currently have Tracy online.
okay. Very good. All right, then, we will hear no public comment. We'll close public comment. The next item is closed session. Mr. Buchanan, if you would.
I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for personnel.
Very well, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, opposed nay. Very well.